is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Stochastic Playoff NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. We had 4 games last night. We have 4 more tonight. Dallas evened up the series. That was a big win for them. The Blues went down 2-0. That sucks for them. The Oilers game was a wild game, but that was like wee in the morning. So unless you're like 19 and can handle that kind of stuff, you're probably sleeping. The Canadiens game is actually really good. They just allowed a few too many high danger chances, and Ovi made them play. But they looked pretty good after they settled down in the first half of the game. They looked a little choppy, but that's going to be a tougher series than many Capitals fans think. But we have 4 more games tonight. We have a series finally starting, the Panthers Lightning. And then we have game 2s of the Devils, Hurricanes, Senators, Maple Leafs, and Wild Knights. That game's 11 p.m. Eastern. That game starts Wednesday morning where Cliffy is. This schedule is crazy, but joining me to break it down, Slim Cliffy, what's going on?
Yeah, not a whole lot. I mean, last night it's one of those nights. It's very cliche to say, but it's why we watch hockey. It's why we watch playoff hockey. Montreal making the comeback, 2 goals in the second half of the third period to tie it 2-2 and force overtime. St. Louis and Winnipeg was a 2-1 barn burner. Dallas and Colorado traded leads before Dallas tied it late and then won in overtime. Edmonton peeled off 3 straight goals to tie it 5-5, including 2 goals in the final 2 minutes. And then Phil Deneau scores about 20 seconds after that to win 6-5 in regulation. Absolutely wild night of hockey. I had 10 entries in the $10. I didn't do that well. I only had one pretty good lineup. I was telling you, it was frustrating. I had a few Washington lineups. I had a few Los Angeles 1 lineups. I didn't have any lineups with both of them. Andrei Kuzmenko, goal and 2 assists. Adrian Kempe, goal and 2 assists. Alex Ovechkin, 2 goals and an assist. Those guys all had really great nights. So didn't do that well last night in the $10. If anybody did, congrats to you. But tonight is a new night. We do have 4 games, including that game starting at 12 a.m. I mean, it'll be a 12:15 a.m. puck drop by the time it starts. And if you're Newfoundland, it's 12:45. So if you happen to be a Golden Knights fan in Newfoundland, you get to stay up till 3:30 in the morning watching that game tonight. So this is just a wild schedule. And just a heads up, the first game locks at 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour earlier than normal for a weekday, especially a non-holiday weekday. So if you're used to sitting down at 6:30 Eastern to kind of set lineups and look for news and all that, you're going to be late because Devils and Hurricanes locks at 6 p.m. Eastern. So just make note of that. But 4 games on the board here tonight. A few teams looking to go up 2-0, as you mentioned, Panthers and Lightning kicking off their series. So a lot to look forward to here tonight.
Yeah, I remember on the trade deadline, or the show after the trade deadline, we're kind of like, well, I don't know if Kuzmenko is really the guy the Kings needed. He has 6 goals and 14 assists in 23 games for the Kings. Seems like a pretty good signing for them. We weren't exactly right on that. We aren't the biggest Kuzmenko slappies you'll find around, but he has been really good for them, so that's nice to see. Maybe they'll actually win a series for once. But let's get into this slate. Being in Mountain Time would be elite during playoff time. Or it's really just really nice for all sports, really. East Coast kind of sucks. Cliffy is even worse. And then, Hawaii, it's like the inverse of Cliffy. You just have to set your alarm to wake up to watch sports. So whatever. If you do want to support us further, you can click that link in the chat and use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off a week or a month. if you're, playing playoff hockey, you can take it week by week, go week there. We have MLB, PGA, MMA, NBA playoffs in full swing. So if you do want to support us further, that will help us. But let's get into this slate as I get a notification that my order from Post Malone is ready to ship. I wonder what my wife just bought. We'll have to ask her, and I'll report back. But New Jersey Devils with a 2.2 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.2. Big news there. Brendan Dillon and Luke Hughes are out tonight. Cody Glass expected to play. Brendan Dillon is a loss. Luke Hughes is a big loss. They were already in trouble without Siegenthaler and Hughes. Jack Hughes. Now losing the other Hughes is really, really bad. He's by far their best puck mover. Maybe they'll trade for another Glassjaw Hughes in the offseason. But for now, Dennis Cholowski and Simon Nemec are coming into the lineup now. Dennis Cholowski couldn't even make the roster on the Islanders when half their blue line was missing. And Simon Nemec is a very highly touted defensive prospect, but he had a awful season. So like the back end of this Devils blue line is just rough. Their only puck mover now is Dougie Hamilton. Brett Pesce's fine, but he's playing with Dougie Hamilton. So like when Dougie Hamilton's off the ice, it's going to be really hard for them to create offense here. Not that like I'm going out of my way to stack the Devils here tonight. They're not they're not high up on my list for single entry. They're going Hischier, Meyer, Palat, Bratt, Mercer, Halla, Nason, Glass, Cotter. It's just like if you're making like 20 lineups and you happen to get to like one Nico Hischier, Timo Meyer stack or something like that, one Jesper Bratt, one off, fine. But like I really worry about the puck moving. Luke Hughes, before he got hurt, led the team in shot assists in game one. Shot assists are when a pass leads to a teammate's shot. It's just further indication that he is their best puck mover. Dougie's going to have to play more now. I'm not convinced he's totally healthy. So it's really hard for me to get to Devils here. The Carolina side is a lot more interesting to me. Like Markstrom could only do so much. He saw 47 shots or something like that in the first game. You take Brendan Dillon out, a defensive defenseman, put in Cholowski and Nemec. Like he's going to be under siege. He could be a decent goalie play, even if he gives up 4 goals here tonight. I do really like that top line of Aho, Jarvis, Blake at 17,000. They're fully correlated, coming in at 17.4 projected. Now they didn't have a great DFS game one. Most of the damage was done by the middle six, like Logan Stankoven in particular. But this line is tremendous. They're not very expensive. They have a 14.8% top 2 stack, and this Devils team is just depleted. So I do really like Carolina one here. If you're worried about the ownership, going down the lineup is perfectly fine here. Both the depth lines are around 9% projected. The Taylor Hall line is 12,000. The Stankoven line is 10,300. So if you are looking to, do some sort of Leafs power play stack, Vegas power play stack, do something with Tampa power play, something like that, like a 2-man Stahl, Stankoven, or like Hall, Kotkaniemi is perfectly fine. They wouldn't be the first ones into my lineup. You know what I mean? They would be a filler line I'd stack around them. If I decide to use Carolina one, they would be who I would build around. So like I think Carolina has 3 playable lines. Depending on what you want to do, my favorite is Carolina one. But if you are looking elsewhere for your primary stack, I think going down the lineup is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I'll start on the New Jersey side. I will say I don't have any interest in that Meyer Hischier line. Like it's quote probably their best line. Here's the thing: is like Hischier and Palat, who's on the other wing, have not been good together this season at all. Now, Hischier and Palat were good together last year. Palat's had a real bad season. And I don't know if it's necessarily him or adjusting to the new coach, because believe it or not, it was Lindy Ruff. Under Lindy Ruff, New Jersey played a lot off the rush, and that's what Palat did. Is he, despite maybe his reputation, he played a lot of his offense was created off the rush. New Jersey this year went basically to entirely creating off the forecheck. Like, unless you were on the Jack Hughes line, which Palat was at times, you were creating off the forecheck. And Palat's just not been that type of player for a few years now. And so I don't think he's meshed well basically anywhere in the lineup. Him and Hischier definitely not been good together. They haven't had a ton of time together this year, only about 70 minutes worth of ice time, but 44 shot attempts, 1.7 expected goals per 60 minutes. Like, it's been horrific. I think there's a reason why they haven't really gone to it that much. So, like, I'm out on New Jersey 1. I'm not in on New Jersey 3. How healthy is Cody Glass? Not really that big of a fan of him. Paul Cotter's fine, but when you see the depth options on the Carolina side, I'd rather just play them. If anything, it would be Bratt, Mercer, and Haula. Like, Bratt and Haula up over 90 minutes together this season, 69 shot attempts, 3.2 expected goals, 2.6 actual goals per 60. So they've actually been fine/good offensively together. You'll get Bratt and Mercer skating on the power play for as little as that's worth. Like, they're still facing the best penalty kill in the league. So if anything, it would probably be the Bratt line, but I really don't have interest in New Jersey. Like you said, missing Jack Hughes at a certain point, or missing Jack Hughes, missing Jonas Siegenthaler, missing Luke Hughes now. At a certain point, you're just missing too many players. So I'm out on New Jersey. I'm in on the Carolina side. The nice thing is, like, there's basically 3 different price points. Like, you can use Carolina 1 if you want to use a mid-price stack. You can use Carolina 2 if you want a filler-ish type stack. You can use Carolina 3 if you want just a punt stack. So the way I would approach it if I'm playing single entry is Carolina is not the first team into my lineup. Whether I play Toronto or whether I play Florida or whether I play Vegas, whatever I play, I put that stack in, and then whatever stack I need from Carolina is the one I would use. It's not like I'm building around the Aho line, or it's not like I absolutely have to play the Stahl line and I'll go find a more expensive line later. Like, the Carolina line would be my second stack into the lineup. Now, I think all 3 lines are very playable. I will say, watching that first game, trust me, like, I'm a massive Logan Stankoven fan. I think he's genuinely going to be a superstar in this league. He had 2 goals. He's up to 7 goals in 20 games with Carolina now. I still thought that Svechnikov, Kotkaniemi, Hall line was their best line. And, Svechnikov has had a real tough season. Him and Kotkaniemi really didn't play that well together this year. But, they're only $12,000. Svechnikov is on the top power play unit. They're coming in with 9% ownership. That's kind of the one thing that's holding me back. So at that point, like, I might almost dip down and just go back to Stahl, Stankoven, Martinook, stage the $1,700 for similar ownership price. They'll go out against that New Jersey top line that will struggle offensively. All told, I do like Aho, Jarvis, and Blake the best, just because I do think they're the most talented line. Since the 4 Nations break, 3.9 expected goals, 3.7 actual goals per 60. But I think this is a case where I would save some money, go play one of the depth lines. I'm more partial to Stankoven, Martinook, Stahl, just because with how much Svechnikov has generally struggled this year, I don't want to put a ton of weight just on game 1, even though he did look pretty good. So I think for me, it would be the Stahl, Stankoven, Martinook line, and I'd use them as a filler to play with your Tampa Bay or your Florida or your Toronto or whatever. But I do think Carolina has 3 playable lines here, and I play all 3 lines before I play anything from the New Jersey side.
Agreed. Mrs. Potato with a 1-hour photo bomb. It's her birthday. It's her birthday today. She would have been 97 today, so got to have Mrs. Potato Head in the shot. Ottawa Senators with a 2.6 total heading into Toronto. The Leafs have a 3.3. Toronto's still going Matthews, Marner, Nyes, Nylander, Tavares, Holmberg. That's the switch. Like Holmberg and Domi switch spots in game one, and it's sticking. The third line, McMahon, Robertson, Domi. Ottawa going Kachuk, Stützle, Giroux, Batherson, Cousins, Perron, Pinto, Grieg, Amadio. Grieg wasn't at morning skate, neither was Jensen. Jensen hasn't skated most of the year.
They said they're both available for tonight, so I assume they're playing.
Yeah. If Hamonic comes in on that second pair, they're in trouble. But here's the thing. There's a lot of ownership on Toronto projected and not a lot of ownership projected on Ottawa. And we both kind of agreed. We were talking about this game yesterday morning in DMs. Toronto did not look good in their own zone. But Ottawa had one of the most undisciplined games they've had, which is saying a lot because they have a Kachuk on their team. Man, I do have a fair amount of interest going to Cousins, Batherson, Perron here at 14-1, coming in at 2.6 projected. Get Cousins and Batherson on the top power play. That they looked like the best line in game one. Like you could argue Grieg, Pinto looked pretty good too, but Grieg did his moronic stuff that he does. If Ottawa can tighten up their responsibility a little bit and not give the Leafs 6 idiotic power plays and they don't take stupid cross-checking penalties, this is a winnable game for them. Whenever they got into the Leafs zone, the Leafs defensemen struggled to get it out of the zone. It looked like I was watching a Rangers game. So, like, I do like Cousins, Batherson, Perron here at 14-1. If you want to go to Stützle, Kachuk, Giroux, that's fine. But, like, they've had trouble creating all season. And it still kind of rang true in that first game. If you do want to, get in Kachuk, you can leave off Perron and add in Kachuk. He is a shot bot around the net. And as long as he's not in the box, he's a very important player to them. So it would be Ottawa 2 for me. I don't mind Ottawa 3 if you need a filler. Like, I do like the depth of Carolina better. But if you are playing multiple lineups with multiple expensive stacks and you need, different options, I don't mind Ottawa 3 here. But my favorite line on Ottawa is the second line. If you want to add in Kachuk or Stützle, that's fine. On the Toronto side, the Tavares, Nylander, Holmberg line is 15-8 with 15% projected ownership. Pontus Holmberg moving up there for Domi does nothing. It's, as Cliffy would say, it's like shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. Holmberg doesn't add anything offensive. He's a decent defensive player. It's probably why they did it, because Domi is a black hole defensively. I mean, listen, Tavares and Nylander did a good bit of damage on the power play. So if you want to go there, that's fine. But my interest would be Toronto 1, and they're expensive at 21.5. We've seen them up more expensive, and they're still the most expensive line on the night. But if you do like power play stack Florida or power play stack Tampa, or do something expensive with Vegas, then you're kind of in that similar realm. Especially if you want to leave off Nyes and add in a Nylander, then it gets like really expensive. But there's enough depth on this slate that you can handle it. And if Ottawa's going to have another undisciplined game like they did in game one, this team is going to absolutely shred them on the power play. So I am targeting the Leafs power play guys. It'd be Matthews 1, Nylander 2. Honestly, Tavares 3, just because, he's a little bit cheaper than Marner. I don't really want a full stack Toronto 2. I guess you could leave off Holmberg and add in Matthews or something like that. So I'd be focused on the Leafs power play guys. Another cheap line, if you wanted to add into your MME mixes fillers, Toronto 3, McMahon, Robertson, Domi. When that line has been together, they've generally been fine. You can throw them into the mix. I prefer Ottawa 3. I obviously prefer Carolina 3, but if you need options down there, I think they're fine as well.
Yeah, I'll start on the Toronto side. you mentioned how there's some ownership coming in on Toronto, and I think rightly so. Like, if you look at the center projections on Stochastic, Austin Matthews is at 14.5 points. He's projected for 3 more DK points than the next closest center, and the next closest center is John Tavares. So, like, they have the top 2 projected centers on the slate. So I think that, they do have very justified ownership here tonight. One thing I will say is that it feels weird to say, like, I don't want this to sound like too hot of a take. I do think Ottawa is, quote, the better 5-on-5 team.
It's not a hot take.
But I do think that even as shaky as the Leafs penalty kill is, that Toronto's penalty kill is better than Ottawa's, and Toronto's power play is much better than Ottawa's. And at the very least, Stolarz is equal to, if not better than Ullmark. So, like, there are other areas where Toronto can make it up. But, like, if I'm paying over $21K for a line, I don't want it to go up against that. Like, that's the Stützle, Giroux, Tkachuk line. For as much as they've struggled offensively, and they have 1.9 goals per 60 minutes scored, they've only given up 2.4 against, which is about league average. And considering, how Giroux hasn't really had his typical season, Tkachuk has been hurt at times. It's not really that easy of a matchup. Like, it's all like having to face the Ottawa second line would be a much better matchup, but then I don't want to stack the Pontus Holmberg line. So I think, kind of almost by process of elimination, that I agree with you. I would focus on the power play guys here, because it feels like one of those series where, like, if Toronto's going to rack up goals in games, it's because they go 2 for 5 on the power, or like 3 for 6, like they did the other night. I don't think they go 3 for 6 again, but like 2 for 5 or 2 for 4 or something like that on the power play, because Toronto's power play is very, very good, and Ottawa's penalty kill is very, very bad. So I do think I agree with you. Like, I would do like a Matthews, Tavares, Marner, Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, like something like that. Just like a Matthews, Nylander, and then be on your way, like, or just Matthews one off, or like Tavares has a really good point per dollar value. I think he has the best point per dollar value of any center over 4K here tonight. So just a one-off John Tavares, if you make your lineup and you need a 6K one-off or something like that, I think that's fine. I would focus on the power play guys here. I don't really care about Holmberg. I don't really care about the third line that much. So I think I agree with you in that instance on the Toronto side. On the Ottawa side, it feels like with that top line, they're in that Alexander Barkov, Sam Reinhart, Carter Verhaeghe bucket, and we'll get to them in a second, where they're playing pretty well defensively. They're actually creating well enough offensively. They're just not finishing. Like, the top line shooting under 6% of 5-on-5. They're shooting like 5.8% or something like that. It's like they're just shooting like 8%. You know what I mean? Which would still be below the league average. They'd be pretty good offensively. If they're shooting 9 or 10%, like, look out. They can do it. Can they do it in a single game? Like, that's tough to say. The Toronto top line is as good defensively as they are. I agree with you. Once they actually get the puck into the zone, that's where Toronto's defenseman is really struggling. Like, Brandon Carlo, I thought looked like absolute trash in game 1. And, if Ottawa had been a bit more disciplined, that's probably a different outcome, just because that second period was so bad. And if they continue to play like that, Ottawa's going to win, at least a couple games here. So I don't mind Ottawa too, but I think I'd almost attack Ottawa in kind of the same way that I would attack Toronto. Is I would focus on the power play guys. Is like do like a Cousins, Batherson, Tkachuk, Stützle, Tkachuk, Batherson, something like that is the way I would approach it, because Ottawa has generally struggled to score at 5-on-5 this year, but their power play has been a difference maker. They also do draw power play opportunities. Over the final third of the season, Ottawa was at 3.3 power play opportunities per game. It led the league. And we know how bad, that Toronto penalty kill has been basically all year. over the course of the entire season, Ottawa led the league in power play opportunities. So if Ottawa can stay out of the box and force Toronto to take some penalties, on their side, could be 6-2 Ottawa here tonight. So I would, if Ottawa is going to pile in the goals, I don't think it's going to be at 5-on-5. It's going to be on the power. It's going to be because of the power play, and maybe they get an empty netter or something. So I think regardless of which side you take here, I would lean Toronto just because, I'm a projection whore. I lean to the projections. So, Tavares and Matthews have such strong projections. I would lean to that side. But I think regardless of which side you take here, you focus on the power play guys, because I think this is going to be a game in a series about special teams and not so much about even strength play.
Yeah, I agree. Isles just announced that Lou is out as president and GM. The minority owner, John Collins, is going to lead a search for the GM. That's a little bit surprising.
I never thought I'd see the day.
I mean, he's 127 years old, so it's maybe time for him to retire, but good for them. Miserable area. No one wants to go there. Florida Panthers with a 2.7 total. Heading into Tampa Bay, the Lightning have a 2.9. This is game 1 of the series in the Battle of Florida. They start in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is going Kucherov, Point, Gord, Gensel, Hagel, Cirelli. I think they're going 11-7 again. That's just what they do for some reason. While Bjorkstrand is out, the third line is Paul, Geeky, Goncalves. Florida going Reinhart, Barkov, or Hagee. Looks like Matty Tkachuk will be back tonight on a line with Bennett and Samoskevich. Marchand with Lundell and Luosterainen. This is a very intriguing series. I think whoever wins this series has a very strong possibility of coming out of the East. This being that they're starting in Tampa is important because they're going to send out that Hagel-Cirelli duo against the Barkov-Reinhart-Verhaeghe line. That almost just cancels those two lines out for me in single entry. If you watch that Barkov line play in the playoffs last year, they shut the door on absolutely everybody they played against. Not surprising, the Rangers included. The Rangers couldn't even get into Florida zone, but that's another story for another day. That Hagel-Cirelli line has been very good defensively, whether it's Paul there, Gensel there, whomever. Another issue is Barkov, Reinhart, Verhaeghe have struggled to create offense this season for whatever reason. Verhaeghe hasn't had the best season. Reinhart has done most of his damage on the power play. I don't know. They're all good players. Things happen. So I'm pretty much out on the Barkov line here. The second line is interesting to me because they're a little bit more expensive than Carolina won. They're coming in with a third of the ownership. It's just a question of how healthy Tkachuk actually is. I have no faith that either Tkachuk is fully healthy at this point, but who is 100% at this point? But Bennett and Samoskevich with whomever was on that line, Marchand or Evan Rodriguez or even Carter Verhaeghe at times, has been very, very good. They're going to run into that top line, Point, Kucherov, Gord, and listen, there's a reason Gensel isn't with Kucherov and Point. They've struggled defensively. I'm more likely to play Florida 2 here than I would Florida 1. Bennett, shoots the puck a lot. We all know Tkachuk. I'm a little concerned about his playing time here tonight, but I feel like once he gets back into it, he won't feel anything until after the game. Mackie Samoskevich had a very good rookie season. They're 17-2. That's the issue, right? I think I'd rather just go to Carolina 1 at that point at 17,000. So Florida's more of an MME play because going into Tampa is not easy anymore. They struggled defensively for last season and parts of this season, but they really shored it up. I'm more likely to play something on the Tampa side, but if they're going to send out Hagel-Cirelli consistently against Barkov, and that Hagel-Cirelli line at 18-1 is getting almost 14% ownership, that's going to be a no for me, dog. I'll probably go to some sort of, point Kucherov 2-man, just a Kucherov 1-off. Like, I guess you could full stack that line, but they are going 11-7, so I would imagine Gensel does take some spins there. For me in this game, it'd be some sort of point Kucherov X if you wanted to add in Gensel for the power play, because Florida has had an uptick in penalties later in the season. So, doing some sort of expensive stack, I think, is fine. That third line is interesting. I don't know if you need like super, super cheap unless you're like just straight up power play stacking the Leafs, but like a 2-man of Paul Geekie or Geekie Goncalves, I think you can do. But really, these are two pretty good defensive teams. I lean Tampa for two reasons. One, they're home, and two, Bob hasn't been that great this season. Maybe he shorts it up and plays in the playoffs like he did last year, but I'm more likely to play Tampa here than Florida. I think this is a long series, though.
Yeah, I would kind of cross off Florida 1 and Tampa 2 here for the reasons that you mentioned, is that they're both really good defensive lines. Like, Hagel and Cirelli had 500 minutes at home together this season where they were used almost exclusively in a shutdown role. In those minutes, Tampa 2 expected goals against per 60, 1.9 actual goals against. Like, those are Barkov-esque defensive numbers. Like, it's just a brutal matchup for Florida 1. And for a line that didn't score 5-on-5 this season as it was, and facing a Tampa Bay team that, their penalty kill wasn't like elite. Like, we're not talking like Carolina Hurricanes, but it was a top 10 penalty kill in the league basically all season. It's not a good power play matchup for Florida either. So, Florida 1 is out for me, and because the Barkov line is so good defensively, Tampa 2 is off the board for me. So for me, in the top 6, it's either Tampa 1 or Florida 2. Now, Tampa 1 is kind of interesting because Gordon Kucherov didn't get to play much together this season. They only had 55 minutes, but they're really good offensively in those minutes. 76 shot attempts, 4.6 expected goals per 60. Like, they generated offense extremely well. Now, again, we're looking at like 4 or 5 games worth of ice time, so I don't read a whole lot into it, but they did mesh well together. And if Tkachuk is close to 100% healthy, him and Bennett were really good on the second line. Like, even without Carter Verhaeghe on that line with them, with whom they've had a lot of success with over the last couple of years, 3.6 expected goals, 3.3 actual goals in 255 minutes together, 5-on-5. Like, they were really good. So to me, it kind of comes down to special teams, right? And considering Florida does take a lot more penalties. If you look over just the final third of the season, Florida had 3 times shorthanded per game, 6th most in the league. They also tied for the 5th most in the league over the course of the whole season. So Tampa stands a better opportunity of getting more power play opportunities. The Florida power play wasn't the same with Seth Jones. Now, Matthew Tkachuk returning should help, but, they were really good with Ekblad. They weren't the same with Seth Jones, and you're reintroducing Tkachuk, who hasn't played in 2 months, right? So there's a little bit of uncertainty there. So kind of almost, again, by process of elimination, I think Tampa 1 is my favorite line here tonight. Kucherov, Point, and Gord, 19,100, 14.9% ownership, 19.1% top 2 stack. If you want to take out Gord and put in Gensel or Hagel, make it more of a power play stack, I think that's fine. But I also think this is a good enough 5-on-5 matchup. Because listen, assuming Forsling and Jones go a fair bit against or a fair bit with Barkov, that's going to give some easier matchups against the depth defense pairs for Kucherov, Point, and Gord. So I honestly like the matchup for Tampa 1 the best of any line in this game. So for me, it'd be Tampa 1 and then Florida 2. If I were to play a depth lineup from either side, it would probably be Florida 3, Marchand, Lundell, and Luostarinen. At 11,800, though, like, even though they're coming in with a bit more ownership, I think I'd rather just go play something from Carolina. So, like, rather than play 3% Florida 3. I'll go play like 9% Carolina 3 or something like that. So I don't mind Florida 3, but I think that'd be more MME. Single entry for me, it goes Tampa 1, Florida 2. But I do like the Tampa side better, generally speaking.
Yeah. Your point about Florida 3 is good because I prefer Carolina 2 or Carolina depth, but that Luosterainen and Lundell pair was one of their best lines in the playoffs last year. So if they can replicate, they'll get 15 minutes with Marchand going forward. Keep that line circled. Minnesota Wild with a 2.3 total. Heading into Vegas, the Golden Knights have a 3.3. This game is in the middle of the night for no reason. TV deals, blah, 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 corporate greed, yada, yada, yada. One switch for Minnesota. They moved Rossi to the fourth line. They moved Hartman up to the third line. So they're going to go Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, Boldy, Marcus Johansson, Freddie Gaudreau, Matt Zuccarello, Foligno, Hartman, Nyquist, then Trennan, Rossi, Brazeau. Vegas status quo here going Barbashev, Eichel, Stone, Saad, Hurdle, Dorofeyev, Carlson, Olofsson, Smith, Howden, Roy, Kolasar. There's a pretty fair bit of ownership on both sides here, and this game I will not be awake for. I don't think they're going to, like, at this point, like, they're just going to run these lines. You have to hope, like, unless someone, gets sick or something between now and lock. These are the lines. Minnesota 1 is 20,500, the second most expensive behind Toronto 1. It's just a tough task at that price with the 2.3 total on the road in Vegas, who, like, you can definitely see winning a cup this year. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I don't know if I want to spend 20,500 when you can spend a couple hundred more bucks and get Toronto against a team that just took 6 penalties. So, like, a Kaprizov one-off, I think, is fine. A Boldy one-off is fine. Going down the lineup, like a Zuccarello one-off. I am not super high on Minnesota here. Going into Vegas just is not ideal. If they were cheaper, like 18,900, say, like, it would be somewhat of a different conversation. But getting up over 20,000 on the road in Vegas, I'd save that conversation for Game 3 in Minnesota. On the Wild side, I think they have 3 playable lines, and Jake's ownership projections agree, considering the Eichel line has 15.7% projected ownership, the Hurdle line has 13.6% projected ownership, and the Carlson line has 7% projected ownership. Now, I think my favorite is Hurdle, Dorofeyev, Saad. They've just been their best line since Saad has gotten there. Eichel, Stone, and Barbashev, when they get humming, are easily their best line. But I want to save the $2,500, and you still get Hurdle and Dorofeyev on the top power play. The Minnesota penalty kill sucks. They are really good at 5-on-5, so that's another reason I want to save the extra $2,500. If you can't get up to Hurdle, Dorofeyev, Saad, I think Carlson, Smith, Olofsson at 12,000 is fine. I honestly think Eichel, Stone, Barbashev's fine. It's just at that ownership and at that price, I'll take a little bit less ownership, still get 2 guys on the top power play unit. They play similar minutes, and you save $2,500. So for me, Vegas 2. This is definitely a Vegas game for me. I think, Minnesota's fine. It's just that top line price is just too much for single entry.
Yeah, I mean, the Minnesota top line has been good. 75 shot attempts, 3.1 expected goals, only 2.7 actual goals, shooting 7.5%. You got to think that comes up. Problem is like the Minnesota power play hasn't been very good. Like, as currently constructed, they're basically league average for a top power play unit. And that's the one thing where Vegas has really struggled this year is, Vegas doesn't take many penalties. That's been a huge problem. The least penalized team in the league this season, second least penalized team in the league over the final third of the season. But their penalty kill wasn't very good. But the Minnesota power play also isn't that good either. Like I said, the top power play unit's about average for a top power play unit. So it's not like Vegas, anything can happen in a single game, but I don't expect them to like pull an Ottawa and give up 3 power play goals on 6 opportunities or something like that. So that's one thing that's really hurting Minnesota. Like I if I was playing 20 lineups, I think that's one of those things where like maybe I have a couple of Minnesota one in a single entry. Like I think I agree with you. I'd rather go play the Toronto top line, or some sort of Tampa Bay stack or something like that. So probably out on Minnesota one. One line that is kind of interesting to me is now that they've moved Hartman beside Foligno. You know, I watched that first game. I thought other than Kaprizov, that Hartman was probably Minnesota's best player, or at least their best forward. And you know, him and Foligno haven't been that bad together this season. About league average by expected goals for, about league average by actual goals for, in about 320 minutes together at 5-on-5. Like being league average for quote a third line isn't that bad. And you know, they're what, 9,500. If you want to leave off Nyquist, go ahead. But I do think that's one of those fillers you can use if you want to put them in with, you know, your Torontos or your Tampa Bays or whatever. You know, a 2-man of like Hartman and Foligno or something like that, just because they'll probably get 14, 15 minutes, which isn't that bad. All you need is one correlated goal and you're kind of laughing, right? So I don't mind. I think the Hartman line is honestly my favorite line from the Minnesota side here. And I would consider them as a filler with, like I said, Toronto or Tampa Bay or Florida or something like that. Other than that, not a lot of interest in Minnesota. My interest is more on the Vegas side. Here's my one problem with Vegas. I don't know if anybody looked at the ice time from game 1. Nicholas Roy was the least used Vegas forward. He played 13-15. Mark Stone was the most used Vegas forward. He played 17-16. So between 13-15 and basically 4-minute difference between the least used and most used Vegas forward. And it's not like it was a blowout where Minnesota clawed a couple goals back late. It was 1-1 after the first, 2-1 after the second, and 3-2 halfway through the third period. Like it was a close game the entire game, and not a single Vegas forward played 17.5 minutes. And I always think about what I had a Vegas writer say to me once is like, when they have Eichel and Hurdle and Carlson and Roy all healthy, they kind of want to roll 4 lines. They want to use that center depth and be able to take advantage of bad third and fourth lines from the other team. And, you know, they do have good third and fourth lines and create differences there with more ice time. Now, whether that persists game to game, I don't know. But that's something that's in the back of my head now, is that this was a close game 1, at least by the score. And Mark Stone led the way at 17 minutes and 16 seconds of ice time. You know, this is a team where we were used to seeing Jack Eichel skate 20 to 22 minutes a night for months on end. And that just was not the case in game 1. So that concerns me a little bit. If anything, it would be one of the top 2 lines. I think I agree with you. I kind of lean Hurl Dorofeyev's side, because like if Eichel, Stone, and Barbashev aren't going to get 19 minutes, I don't really see what differentiates them from the second line then, because the second line's just been just as good as them offensively at 5-on-5. The second line also has 2 players on the top power play unit. So I would probably go Hurdle Dorofeyev's side. They're at 3.8 expected goals, 3.6 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5 together this season. They were Vegas's best line in game 1. At like literally at no point when that line's been together have I watched them play poorly. So I would probably go back to Hurdle Dorofeyev's side. No problem playing Eichel, Stone, Barbashev if you want to go to that top line. You know, Hurdle Dorofeyev and side are coming in over-owned, 13.6% ownership against 7% top 2 stack. So I get it in that sense. But I think Vegas 2 is my favorite line here. Vegas has 3 playable lines in single entry. I only have the interest in the Hartman line from the Minnesota side. I think this is more of a Vegas game for me.
Yeah, your point about rolling 4 lines is unfortunately true. The only players who played less than Hurdle and Dorofeyev were Nick Roy and Keegan Colasar. So, you know,
right? Like, you know, the Stone Eichel Barbashev line was the most used line. And like I said, Eichel and Stone were around 17 minutes. So it's like
Brett Howden played more than Tomas Hertl. But Vegas, baby. Let's talk about defensemen. Let me pull them up because I'm an idiot and didn't have it ready because I was chapped about Brett Howden's ice time. But here we go. At the top of the board, we have Victor Hedman, then Jake Sanderson, Dougie Hamilton, Shea Theodore, Tomas Chabot, Seth Jones. Those are the guys 5K to 6K. Hedman, the most expensive on the board at 6K. Honestly, I don't mind Hedman because, it's a decent power play spot from the amount of power plays they can get. But for me, I think it would be Jake Sanderson 1 for me. I may even say like Shea Theodore 2. Like even he played under 20 minutes though. There isn't like a 8,200 Cale Makar, so that's nice. That's nice not having to worry about it. So like, I don't think you have to spend up here, but I think I would go Sanderson 1, Hedman 2, Theodore 3, Dougie 4. Like Dougie's going to have to play a lot of minutes here tonight. What is he going to do with those minutes with all these guys out? So, top range, I'm not super high on. I think, it's a good time to spend in the mid-range or lower tonight.
Yeah, Jake Sanderson does have a pretty strong point per dollar projection for his price. 10.9 projected DK points at 5,700, so 1.9 points per thousand. That's fine to me. And he played heavy minutes in the last game. He might even play heavier minutes here tonight. So I really don't mind Sanderson just because it is a good power play matchup for Ottawa. And as long as it's a good power play matchup for Ottawa, I don't mind Sanderson. I do wonder about Dougie Hamilton. It seems like they never want to play him like 23 or 24 minutes. So I'm getting ready for like 26 minutes from Brett Pesce and 25 minutes from Brian Dumoulin. So I'd almost have more interest in like those super cheap New Jersey guys. Like, I think Dumoulin played 24 minutes in the last game and he's 2,900. That seems like a decent opportunity for cheap block bonus. Shane Gostisbehere, I think is fine in a good power play spot. Alex Pietrangelo, if you don't want to play Shea Theodore, you want to save like nearly $1,000. I think playing Pietrangelo is just fine. Dmitry Orlov, if I'm not mistaken, led Carolina in ice time in game 1. So I don't know. Dmitry Orlov seems fine. Our boy Artem Zub, Jake McCabe from Toronto seems okay again. Braid McNabb from Vegas seems all right. Nico Mikkola from Florida, if you need a sub 3K. I do think Brian Dumoulin is the guy under 3K I would really target, but Mikkola seems fine. Zach Whitecloud under 3K. Zeev Boom. Don't think I'm pronouncing that entirely correctly. I was trying to remember how it was pronounced in the game that we watched the other night, game 1. He only played 13 and a half minutes, but he still has, pretty good offensive upside. But I do think if I'm paying under 3K, it's probably for Dumoulin or Mikkola.
Yeah, who's the guy yesterday who played 4 minutes and had the block bonus?
Yeah, Josh Brown for the Oilers. Josh Brown for the Oilers yesterday played 4.5 minutes, got the block bonus on DraftKings, and I think they outshot the opposition like 4-2, and goals were +1 for the Oilers in his time. It's just the craziest stat line you'll ever see from a defenseman.
Yeah, the only reason I bring that up is because Simon Nemec is min price. If you have to go min price, he may only play like 11 minutes, but he is min price. Let's talk about goalies here. Top of the board, we have Aiden Hill, Freddie Anderson, Stolarz, and Vasilevsky. Honestly, like Aiden Hill, I think is fine at 8,400. After that, I think I'd go Vasilevsky. He had a great season. I think Stolarz is fine, but I worry if Ottawa unfucks themselves. There's no better way to put it. He could be in for a long night because that blue line did really struggle. If you are spending down, listen, I don't think this is a winnable game for the Devils with all these injuries. but Markstrom may see like 45 shots. And even if he gives up 5, he's going to score like almost 15 DK points. So if you're spending down, I think Markstrom's fine. I guess Gustafsson's fine, but I'd rather just go Markstrom. So I'd go Hill 1, Vasilevsky 2, Stellaris 3, and then cheap guy, I'd go Markstrom.
Yeah, I think I have interest in Vasilevsky just because he's 7,800. If you go by point per dollar, then Freddie Anderson's at the top of the board. It always makes me nervous playing a Carolina goaltender because you're just waiting for like 2 goals on 17 shots or something like that. And it's like, okay, like it's fine, but certainly better than Antti Ranta giving up 8 goals on 14 shots or whatever that was last year. But for me, it's Vasilevsky or Stolarz that I really do have interest in for the expensive guys. For the cheap guys, I'm not probably running out to play Jacob Markstrom, but I think the point that you made is the important one. Is like he's probably going to see a lot of shots again here. I mean, it's not guaranteed. Anything can happen in a single game of hockey, but like if he gives up 4 goals on 41 shots, like you're fine. So don't mind Markstrom. Also, same for Philip Gustafsson. It's one of those things like if Minnesota is going to win games in this series, it's because of good defense, because Gustafsson plays well. Like I don't think it's going to be them blowing Vegas out of the water 7-2 or something like that. It's going to be because of defense and goaltending. So I don't mind Gustafsson either. So Gustafsson and Markstrom are the 2 cheap goalies, and I think Vasilevsky and Stolarz are the 2 expensive ones for me.
Yep. We will not be here tomorrow. My older son gets followed by Children's Hospital at Philadelphia, and he has appointments all day tomorrow. We will be back on Thursday, so look forward to that. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
Just talked about him, so I'm probably going to have to stay up and watch this game until 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever. So may as well make it worth it, Mark Stone.
I want to see Leafs fans squirm here tonight. Drake Batherson.
I do want to see 7 games in that series because I just want to watch people yell at each other all day on Twitter. Like it's entertaining for me.
It's the greatest few weeks ever when the Leafs play in the playoffs. So, besides my kid's birth and marriage, in case my wife is watching, but we will see you guys on Thursday. Good luck, everybody, tonight, and we'll see you in the Discord.
Good luck tonight, everybody.